And the best guess, you will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry with you right through till 7 o'clock tonight. Coming up, Network Rail is not giving bonuses to workers who have been on strike. You tell me, is that all fair or is it discrimination? If you're out on strike, is that fair game then to miss out on cash? And the whole ULEZ debate rumbles on. Now, Ian Duncan-Smith has essentially said it's OK for people to vandalise cameras there or thereabouts. What do you think? Do you agree with that or not? And what is going on in this country when it comes to crime? The absolute state of people running around with machetes. I noticed as well at Notting Hill Carnival the number of stabbings that took place. Some people say now it's time for that carnival to be cancelled. Is it or not? And something I need to get off my chest tonight is something that happened to me on London Underground a couple of days ago. I took to Twitter to share it, describing the madman that threatened the innocent passengers on the tube, including me, who was with my son. A Labour councillor is very unhappy with me, taking me to task about using words like madman when describing a violent perpetrator of crime. I reckon that we have got our priorities all wrong in this country when it comes to the victims of crime versus the perpetrators. Fair play to her. She's agreed to debate me on tonight's programme. So we've got it all to come with Martin Daubney and Alan Miller. But before we get into it, let's cross to the news.
Michelle, thank you very much and good evening. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister says those hit by new ULEZ charges shouldn't expect any more financial assistance from the government. Speaking to GB News, Rishi Sunak said he understands the frustration felt by residents forced to pay a daily charge due to the expansion of the Mayor of London's Clean Air scheme. He also urged the Labour Party to explain why they think it's the right thing to do to go ahead with the plan when families are struggling with the rising cost of living.
This is solely the responsibility of the Labour Party and the Labour Mayor Sadiq Khan and Keir Starmer. It's for them to explain why they think this is the right thing to do, and they should do that. I don't think it's the right priority. People have made their views very clear, and now it's up to them to explain themselves and why they think this is the right thing to do.
Judges will be given the power to order an offender to attend their sentencing hearing under new legislation planned by the government. The Ministry of Justice says the law will enable force to be used if necessary. It comes after serial child killer Lucy Letby refused to attend her sentencing and hear the testimony of her victims' families. Hurricane Idalia has made landfall on Florida's Gulf Coast, according to the U.S. National Hurricane Center. The storm had intensified to Category 4, prompting Florida's emergency chief to tell residents to drop what you're doing and get to safety. It's now been downgraded to a Category 2, but remains extremely dangerous. Speaking earlier today, Governor Ron DeSantis warned residents not to underestimate the danger.
National Hurricane Center expects storm surge to reach up to 16 feet in some areas of the Big Bend region. That level of storm surge is life-threatening. Do not go outside in the midst of this storm. If it's calm where you are, it may be because you are in the eye of the storm, and those conditions will change very, very quickly. So wherever you are, hunker down.
EasyJet's carrying out 3 days of repatriation flights after an air traffic control fault left thousands of British tourists stranded abroad. The first from Palma and Faro are flying into London Gatwick, while additional flights will take place tomorrow and Friday. The airline's also deploying larger aircraft on key routes to accommodate 700 more people. More than 250,000 holidaymakers are thought to have been affected by the disruption. James Cleverly has become the first Foreign Secretary to visit China in 5 years. During the visit, Mr Cleverly held face-to-face talks with Vice President Han Zheng and told broadcasters the UK is clear-eyed that China will not change overnight. Mr Cleverly also said it's important to maintain regular dialogue as we seek to influence the country. The trip's been met with criticism from some Tory MPs who want a tougher stance against Beijing. Former Tory party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith told us the government need to decide what it wants from China.
So this is the real problem. What are we going over for? Is it more business? Is it more trade with them? Or is it to tell them that unless they get their act together and stop abusing people, using slave labour, etc., then we won't trade with them? But we're not doing any of that.
Met Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley has welcomed government plans to ban zombie-style knives. According to the Home Office, work's underway to increase the maximum sentence for their importation, manufacture, possession and sale to 2 years. Police will also have greater powers to tackle offenders who use them. Sir Mark said the weapons are doing awful damage in the capital. And finally, home sales in the UK are expected to be around a fifth lower this year than last year. Property website Zoopla found only around 1 million house sales could be completed. That's the lowest total since 2012 and equates to the average household moving once every 23 years. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to Michelle.
Thanks for that, Tatiana. I'm Michelle Dewberry, right through till 7 o'clock tonight. Keeping me company, I've got the journalist and former Brexit Party MEP Martin Dewbs and the co-founder of Together Declaration, Alan Miller. I've not seen you for a long time, but I have seen you popping up. You seem to be all over the place at the moment, doing very well with some of your campaigning and protesting. One of the issues, ULEZ, I think we will be touching on that at some point later in the programme. That was a topic, I can tell you, that got you all talking last night. So it did, the interview with Sadiq Khan. I have to say, I still have questions remaining about Sadiq Khan's ULEZ thing, around about why is it OK, apparently, to use these polluting cars, but only if you pay. It made no sense to me yesterday. I've slept on it. It still doesn't make any sense to me today. These things are either OK or they're not. Very odd, when basically what you're saying is they're OK as long as you pay. Bit weird. Have I missed something? I don't know. You get in touch and you tell me. You guys are smart cookies. You know what you're on about. gbviews@gbnews.com is how you get hold of me over email. Now, I want to start with a personal story, if you will. Indulge me. On Monday, Bank Holiday Monday, returning home from home, I'd visited my family. I got on the London Underground with my little boy. You all know I've got a little toddler in a pram. When I boarded the tube carriage, I have to say, there was a big group of people sucking whatever, I dread to think what it was, in their balloons, and I moved down the passageway, whatever you call it, the platform, to get on the London Underground at the very end. When the tube doors closed, within seconds, it felt like, basically it all kicked off. This absolute madman on the tube threatening passengers for absolutely no reason whatsoever. It was, I have to say, I am quite a tough cookie, if I say so myself, but being in that situation on a packed tube carriage that was very, very enclosed. This guy ranting, raving, going up and down the carriage, threatening people. I don't mind admitting I was absolutely petrified. The main reason I was petrified was I had those images of that awful situation that happened in Annecy, where that guy was going around stabbing children in their prams. And I panicked, and I found myself moving my child to get him positioned as far away from this guy as possible, which, trust me, was not far because we were there packed in. Anyway, I bent over my little boy's pram, and this lady crossed, she got off her seat and she came and stood right next to me, and she helped me shield my son. And she was shoulder to shoulder with me, and she said to me, don't worry, I'm going to help you, we'll look after him. And I can't even tell you how much it touched me. The whole thing shook me up. It was over very quickly. Tube stops, for anyone that knows, will be about 2 minutes long, so it was about a 2-minute incident. But I've been thinking about it ever since, and I took to Twitter yesterday, actually, to describe my feelings, mainly to thank the person involved. I'll just get that tweet back up for you because it popped up and then it disappeared. And I said the following. On my tube carriage yesterday, a madman was threatening passengers. I tried to shield my toddler who was in his pram, and a lady crossed the carriage to stand alongside me to help protect him. Luckily, the guy did not reach my son, but it was so scary, and I am so grateful to that lady, so thank you. And there you go. I thought, well, that was the end of it. But no, I had a huge response to that tweet, including one from a Labour councillor who took me to task about my language. So the first thought wasn't about the safety of me and my 2-year-old son. It was actually about the language that I'd used to describe the perpetrator. She said the following. A better description would have been a man suffering with mental health problems who became threatening towards passengers. Dehumanising someone just continues negative stereotyping towards those with mental health conditions, especially when access to mental health services is limited. Well, I've got to say, dear listeners and viewers, that infuriated me because I feel, and I don't know about you, that in this society, in this day and age, there seems to be this shift away from the victims of crime, away from what those guys are experiencing, and more towards the perpetrators of crime. It certainly feels that way to me. So when I saw that tweet, I certainly was not happy. Anyway, a little bit of back and forth followed on Twitter, and I invited the lady to join me on my show to actually debate this with me. And I'm pleased to say that she accepted that invitation and joins me down the line as we speak. This is Elizabeth Roberts. She is Shrewsbury Town Councillor. So firstly, thank you very much for taking up my offer to come and debate me. My first question to you, I guess, is upon hearing a story about a lone female travelling with her toddler and being terrified because of an act of violence on the tube, why is your first thought, your primary response, to express concern about the language used to describe the perpetrator?
Firstly, can I say that I also commented that I was glad that you and your son were safe, that this lady interjected.
Yeah, that was your second thought. I'm asking you why your first thought was about the perpetrator.
Let me continue, please. And that as a parent, I would feel as worried as you. When I was contacted by your programme, I was told that you wouldn't be using the fact that I'm a town councillor because I'm talking to you not as a role as a town councillor. My name is Elizabeth Roberts, not Elizabeth. And yes, I did comment with regards to your inflammatory adjective.
Right, so I
work with young people who are autistic, they have ADHD and other neurological conditions, which deems them very vulnerable. They have approximately between 3 and 5 attempts at mainstream education. And by the time they get to us, they are traumatised and they are struggling. Now, moving on to an adult in society, if they haven't had that support and education hasn't supported those for the last 13 years, then they may well end up very frustrated. Now, I would never, ever condone anybody's behaviour that you experience, Michelle. That's truly horrific. And I'm glad that you are okay, and I hope your son is okay and not left with any long-lasting issues. My concern is that targeting people who are vulnerable is a continuation that's happened over the last couple of years. And it's really hard to keep sitting back and listening and reading people saying, well, actually, they're a madman, they're nuts, they're anything that you portray. Obviously, that's not the behaviour of somebody that is of clear mind.
But you see, this is where I take issue. No, hold on. I've listened to you intensely. This is where I take an issue. Firstly, regarding your description as a Labour councillor, that's your description on your public Twitter, the account that you're using to contact me. So hence, I'm describing you the way that you describe yourself publicly, point one. Point two, I have to be honest, when I look around in society, I am sick and tired of people not having to face responsibility for their actions. Personal responsibility seems to have got lost into the ether. Yes, I concur with you, actually. I share your concern and your frustrations about the lack of mental health support in this country, especially you're talking about teenagers. I think that things like access to CAMHS is absolutely appalling, and I think many people need to hang their heads in shame when it comes to how we fail people in society that experience mental health challenges. So we concur on that. However, that is not what I'm describing. What I'm describing is my experience of being in a tube scenario, which was absolutely terrifying. And for the life of me, I cannot fathom why somebody's first response of the left, because it was your first response, yes, as a secondary point, you did express concern. Your first response is to protect the perpetrator and tell me what I should be using, what descriptive terms I should be using in order to soften my description of this guy who I stand by was an absolute madman. If you want to take that descriptive term and then extrapolate that out to meaning that someone's got mental health issues, I would say that the person then that is kind of criticising and putting everyone with mental health issues into a basket is you rather than me. Because if I drove fast or whatever and hurried around to get somewhere A to B quickly, I would say, oh God, you know, I travel like a madman to get here. I was rushing around, I was hurried. I wouldn't use that as a term to say that somebody has a mental health issue.
And that wouldn't be taken either, because that's not in the same context. With regards
but you don't get to tell me the context of my descriptive terms. And this is the issue that I have with people. In society now, we are told how to use words.
And communicating as a town councillor. I am communicating, one, as a person who has great understanding and knowledge of people, young people and adults with neurological conditions. That can seem to be angry in some cases and not have the right support. Yes, this person should be confronted with consequences. There should be. This is behaviour that is not acceptable to frighten general people in such a closed environment as the tube is very frightening. And I totally agree with that. My point is to use such inflammatory language just continues to target our young people and older people who do have mental health conditions. If there was the access to mental health support, and this young man had got that, he may or not have been on your tube.
How do you know he's got mental health issues, this perpetrator, by the way?
As I said, I'm not condoning his behaviour.
How do you know he's got mental health issues?
The right access and the right funding for mental health support, there are far less opportunities and chances for people to get into that state.
How do you know he's got mental health issues?
And they do, which is another thing that I mentioned to you on Twitter. People with who are struggling to cope then go on to self-medicate through alcohol and addiction, which is what I also mentioned on social media. And then that escalates. That snowballs so that people have to fund that. By funding that, they often get themselves into petty crime. That snowballs again, and they get worse. And our prison population is then increased dramatically because these people go in for 2-3 weeks, when what actually would be cheaper in the long run would be to support the mental health services properly and then dramatically reduce this. So you, Michelle, and your toddler would not have been put forward in.
So I will try for the fourth time, because I'm giving you the respect of letting you talk as much as possible, but it's a two-way exchange. How do you know that this person has mental health issues? Because I certainly didn't, and I was stood in a tube carriage with him. So how do you know that?
How do you know that he's a madman?
Because that's the term that I chose to describe him, based on his erratic, aggressive, ridiculous, threatening, violence behaviour. That is how I chose to describe him, and I stand by that. So what I'm fascinated by, because I see this all over society, something bad happens, and the first thing that many people do from the left, they immediately do what I would call playing the mental health card. Why?
Because mental health isn't supported. So from my perspective, what all those adjectives that you have described confirm to me that that person may have an underlying problem. As I said before,
I find that if I had mental health issues, I would find what you're saying pretty offensive.
Not go around doing that.
But if I was suffering with mental health issues, I would find what you're saying pretty offensive, because what you're saying is if someone acts in a violent, aggressive, impulsive, threatening manner, then therefore they must be in this basket of somebody that has a mental health condition. I would reject that if I was one of those true sufferers.
Would you say that that person approached you and the rest of those commuters with a sound and safe mind?
I don't know. And can I be completely honest as well, and you won't like this, I couldn't care less. I could not care less about his state of mind. I care about my safety, but primarily my 2-year-old's safety, and beyond that, the safety of everyone else in the carriage. This fella's state of mind, I genuinely couldn't care less about, and I find it fascinating. I guess this is the point I'm trying to get to. Yes, we all concur that mental health services and all the rest of it need to be funded better. We're on the same page with that. Yes, we concur that people are being let down, but I'm fascinated that when there is wrongdoing in society, why is the immediate, primary, first response to blame it not on the individual, not on the individual's choices and actions, but instead on this mythical third entity of mental health? I can't understand it.
Then I would turn that round and say, why is it that those on the centre and the centre-right then jump on the bandwagon and use it as a prod to keep having a go at certain groups, which is another thing I mentioned on social media.
Who was I having a go? Which certain groups was I having a go at? Criminals? Violent individuals?
But you do. You're known for it, Michelle. When you were
I absolutely
on
did have a go at violent criminals, and I would continue to.
You're known for your inflammatory language to get you this publicity, when actually we should be caring about our fellow human being. Right. We should be thinking, well, actually, yes, I was frightened, my God, and we're safe. But what should have happened for that person? Who could have helped that person before they got to me on the tube, so that didn't need to happen? Because too many of our people are falling through the net. Do you know, my own child at 6 years old was illegally expelled from a primary school after diagnosis and statement of autistic spectrum disorder. And that evening, I found him hanging. I caught him by a minuscule of a minute before I'd lost him. Because
well, as a mum, I must express sympathy for that, because that would be horrendous.
From young children to older people, if they're not supported and that funding is not there, then we end up with a society that is angry, that will then attack others. And there, as I said before, there should be consequences. But my God, this government needs to start funding properly and supporting others. The only reason why I became a Labour councillor was supporting 3,000 families who've got children with neurodiversities, and had to organise a protest march when our local MP signed off on a 40% reduction in the child and adolescent mental health service, which meant we had one consultant that covered Shropshire and Telford and Wrekin.
Well, look, let's end this on a point of agreement, because for time reasons, that is all I've got time for.
In the morning, threatening suicide.
Well, look, I think let's end on a point of agreement. As I said, as a mum, from mum to mum, what you just described with your own son is horrific, and I'm very sad as a family you've experienced that. We agree on the mental health services being reduced. We both agree that that is wrong. That, however, is where our meeting of the minds stops. I do, however, respect you for taking the time to come on and debate with me, because many people, you know what, in this day and age, they throw all kinds of stuff over the Twitter and they don't have the kahunas to back it up. So respect there to that Labour councillor for coming on and debating that issue. You tell me what you think. I think this mental health card has been way too overplayed in society. It's been used as an excuse to explain away wrongdoing wherever it seems to occur. Am I wrong? You tell me. GBViews at gbnews.com is how you get hold of me.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company till 7 o'clock tonight. The journalist and former Brexit Party MEP Martin Dewbs alongside me, as is the co-founder of the Together Declaration, Alan Miller. If you've just tuned in, you've just missed our earlier conversation, which was me debating with a Labour councillor about some of the things that she took me to task on over Twitter when I was describing a really scary situation that me and my toddler experienced at the weekend. And the lady's primary concern was with the use of the word madman. To be fair to her, she does want me to make the point she's not speaking on behalf of the Labour Party, but notwithstanding that, she is a Labour councillor. But I have to say, respect to her, because a lot of people, they don't want to debate different opinions, so respect where it's due. But I have to say, I've come away from my exchange with my mind still in the same position, which is I feel that mental health is used repeatedly over and over again to get people off the hook for their bad behaviour.
It was a fascinating exchange. Initially, it felt like trying to talk to Jehovah's Witness about fossil evidence. You're never going to convince her of your differing viewpoint. She was focusing on semantics, on linguistics, and taking away from your experience, your very real lived experience, and taking offence on behalf of other people. But then as time went on, I think it became quite clear that here's an individual who's been through a traumatic personal experience, who, with great justification, is angry at the system and the lack of support for her son. But then that became a problem with you and your language, and she was projecting her own hurt, her own pain and her own frustration at the system and the lack of support onto you, very, very unfairly. I think that's part of the problem with identity politics and the Liberal left, full stop. They take something specific which makes them angry about anything and everything to do with that topic, particularly about someone like yourself. You're a high-profile individual, you're a target, and she's laid into you, I think, very unfairly. But I think both of you came out well there, and I think it was actually refreshing to hear a debate of opposites, agreeing and parting good company.
Yeah, like I said, respect to her for coming on.
Well, firstly, I want to say I'm very sorry you had that experience and that you're OK.
Good, you was listening then, because I was criticising that not being the first response, so well done.
Well, and also I want to say a brilliant shout-out to the woman who stood in solidarity with you. Like we've seen with the terrorist attacks, the great British public bravely have come out and stood and fought and defended one another, and I think that's what's so great about the public. That's the first point. The second point, I think, is it's become very problematic, so I agree with your point here more, that everything's described in terms of vulnerabilities. Sadiq Khan said all these, what we used to call violent criminals, they're all vulnerable people who are at risk. Now, if you redefine everyone from children to all adults as all being vulnerable and at risk, you can't actually define people in any way. And then the argument that she was making, which I think is very unfair, was to then extrapolate it, as you made the point, and apply it to all people with mental health. I think when you have, and I agree with Martin on this, I think when you have a competing sense of being ostracised, that becomes the medium through which people exchange. Rather than saying we're all citizens, we have a common interest together, there are some people that do things that are terrible. People talk about safe spaces all the time, yet you've been in this experience, and many people have been in this experience. Some people are actually scared now to be in public areas. We've seen all sorts of things happen. The good thing, and I'd encourage everyone to do this, because I know the British public is fantastic for the most part, there are a few people, and I would call them rotten apples, right? People don't like that term either, but for the vast majority...
That's a bit insulting to apples.
Vast majority of people are decent, they support one another, and I'd encourage everyone to be brave and courageous, and then that reinforces itself. And I'd love it if the woman that actually was there with you did make herself known, but congratulations
she was
to
awesome,
her.
and that was actually the point of my tweet in the first place, because I can't even explain how frightened I was, and it's embarrassing saying that, because I am a tough cookie. I would like to think I can defend myself, but when you add your child into the mix, and because I had it locked in my head, the stabbings of the children in the bush, I was terrified. Anyway, do you know what? Lots of reaction, lots of response to that. I ended on the point, actually, of concurement, whatever... concurement, is that a word? Well, it is now, whatever.
Yeah, it is now.
We concurred. The point that we both concurred on is whatever side of the political landscape you are on, it's undeniable that there is a woeful lack of kind of funding, availability, services, etc., for people that genuinely are struggling from mental health issues. You've got police officers being used as some kind of like extended social services system. You've got people that, teenage children, we've just been discussing it there, you've got teenagers that are desperately in need of mental health support. Good luck trying to get hold of CAMHS, by the way, because if you do try and get hold of them, there's a waiting list as long as my arm. The issue that I have, well, it's twofold, I suppose. It's firstly this whole label, mental health. Whenever you hear anything bad happening, you just know. You can count the seconds on your small hand of your watch, because you know within seconds there'll be someone somewhere that says, oh yeah, but don't be mean to him because that guy, he's just got mental health issues. That's the first point. And secondly, the compelled speech issue. I don't like being told, Martin, what words I should and shouldn't use. I don't like ordinary words being captured by this kind of ideology and being twisted to mean something that they're not. And for other people, my final rant is for other people to dictate the context and the meaning and the intention by what you say. So you can say whatever, and then someone else can say, well, I've interpreted that in this way. It's a hate crime, and you are this and that and the other. I found this Wales going mad.
Yeah, I mean, there's a moral hierarchy, and she obviously placed herself above you in terms of judging you by your use of linguistics, as opposed to judging this guy by his actions.
It's not about me and this lady. It's about, I think, society in general. It's got this whole kind of repositioning and repurposing of words. People are told what to think. They're told what to say and how to speak.
But also, people can just be off their heads, wrong-uns, idiots. You know, words I can't use on TV. Doesn't mean they've got a mental health issue. It's like you can actually just be, you know, somebody who's out to cause trouble.
Well, yeah, can you? Is that fair these days?
Absolutely. I think the thing is, when you try and repose everything as a mental health issue, we're in really dangerous territory, because it also means that everyone needs interventions and that no one can have responsibility. You know, responsibility under English law in particular, you are responsible for your actions. There might be circumstances about what's influenced that, but that's the context, and we shouldn't let people off responsibility, but we should do all the other things in society to make sure they try and participate properly.
Yeah, and I also find it interesting to be lectured about use of language from people representing a party who thinks it's absolutely fine to use appalling language from the very top down, actually, to describe people who simply just have a political view that's different to theirs. Anyway, gbviews@gbnews.com. Let me know your thoughts. Lots to unpack there, but there's also lots more to discuss. I want to ask you about striking workers. If you go on strike, should you be eligible to receive a bonus? Yes or no? Your thoughts?
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, it's Aidan McGivern here with the latest forecast from the Met Office here at GB News. Clear at first over the next 24 hours. Clouds then increase, rain spreading up from the southwest for many of us later on. We've got a gap in between weather systems for the time being, low pressure pushing into the North Sea, but the next low is on the way, bringing a series of weather fronts that will particularly affect Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest by the end of the night. Already the clouds are thickening across western areas through the evening and overnight. Clear spells for Scotland, central and eastern England at first, and actually quite a fresh feel here first thing Thursday, with temperatures widely in the single figures. Not quite so fresh further west, where we've got the cloud keeping things a bit milder, and we've also got the rain moving in first thing. Some heavier pulses across parts of Northern Ireland during the morning, as well as Wales and the southwest. That rain slowly pushes into the rest of Wales, the Midlands, southeast England, but it largely avoids Scotland, where we just see one or two light showers in the afternoon, likewise for the north and northeast of England. Feeling warm where we do get some sunshine coming through, feeling disappointingly cool across the central slice of the UK, 16-17, where we've got the outbreaks of rain. Further rain to come across northern England into parts of North Wales, Northern Ireland during Friday morning. Heavy showers clear the southeast, but further downpours are likely into the afternoon. Then the weather settles down this weekend. High pressure builds, plenty of warm sunshine.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes, and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight, alongside me the journalist and former Brexit Party MEP Martin Daubney and the co-founder of the Together Declaration, Alan Miller. Right, I want to get into the conversation. We've just been talking a lot about crime. I was actually going to move on and talk about a bit more crime, but I've got to be honest with you, I'm a little bit crimed out now, quite frankly. So instead, I'm going to talk to you about striking workers. Pretty much every sector these days seems to be on strike, doesn't it? And it seems to have been going on for quite some time. But I found this quite interesting because Network Rail have said that they will be refusing annual bonuses for staff who went on strike. This basically will affect up to about 20,000 members of the RMT union. We're talking about amounts of about 300 quid, but for me, the amount is kind of irrelevant.
Yeah.
What I want to explore is the principle. Do you think it's fair and reasonable for a company to do this?
Totally, 100%. Mick the Grinch Lynch stole Christmas. He then stole our summers. And now he's like trying to go on about, get the world's smallest violins out because they won't get their end-of-year bonus. No. You willingly took part in this at great cost to the economy. £1 billion total, £25 million for every weekday, £15 million for every weekend this strike went on. A great personal cost to the individuals. How many parents out there had to get extra childcare or couldn't even go to work because of train strikes? Great additional costs having to drive, reprogramming the way we travel around the country, doing the train service a huge disservice. I think they deserve to be penalised like this. When they say it's their right to withhold their labour, that's a striker's right. Surely it's an employer's right to withhold an annual bonus if you can't be bothered to go to work. Cry me a river.
Alan Miller?
Well, that's the argument the Network Rail are making. It's saying that they were crystal clear in advance that if people did this, the performance-related bonuses would be impacted, and some people may think it's acceptable. You could make the point they got a 9% pay rise, and that would not have happened had they withdrawn their labour and challenged it. Maybe it would, but the argument that you need to be able to withdraw your labour and it should be a right, even though new measures have been brought in to try and prevent that, which I think are very disingenuous by the government, that you should be able to do that, and they did get a 9% pay rise.
What's disingenuous?
Well, I think the thing is that if you try and prevent the democratic vote happening in a union, right, by putting legislation in place to try and make that problematic so that then you can force them to go back into work, that is a problem, right? People should be able to vote. Now, in this instance...
But likewise, if you don't have any framework, some people can just literally down tools and go on strike for as long as they want, as often as they want.
So we haven't seen that, and what we've seen is that it was a disruption. I think the bigger question is this with all of this, because you can get into the kind of Punch and Judy situation. There's an issue with our transport and infrastructure and logistics. There's an issue with pay. There's an issue with investment. And there was a whole issue with lockdowns and all of those things that have had an impact. And I think the reason we're in a cost of living crisis is partly to do with all those things. And we need a national, ambitious debate and a way of improving our infrastructure, our travel logistics, and that people get better pay. I think everyone should get much better pay, and we should be able to make it profitable.
Yeah, but the whole thing about...
that needs ambition, and that needs commitment by the employers, by those investing in infrastructure, not just trying to make profits with the way it's.
But the whole thing about lockdowns was it restricted our right to work, and the rail unions have been restricting our right to work. It's the same thing, and it's also draped in political ambition. For example, you talk to, like, I've had ding-dongs with RMT staff on this station, and they're nakedly sort of saying this is a political argument. They want to inflict maximum damage against Conservative government, because a lot of them are old trots. Yeah. You know what they're like. This isn't just about pay, it's about politics. They want to cause damage. And us lot, we're just stuck in the middle. We're the mugs who have to pay through the noses to get anywhere by the train, and then we can't even get to blooming work.
Let me ask you this, right? There's a few words, I've got a colourful vocabulary when I'm not on telly. There's very few words that impact me and affect me, but there's one word, right? Well, there's a few actually, but one of them that really creates a response in me, and that is the word scab.
Yeah.
So when it comes to striking, there are some people that, for whatever reason, they've probably got families to support, they physically cannot afford to be on those picket lines, or maybe they just don't want to ideologically, whatever. What do you think to that notion of people being scabs?
Well, the funny thing is, I've been called that by an RMT former executive on this channel, because my dad was a miner who initially went on strike for 3 months when the coal strike came in '84, and then didn't. And the reason that Nottinghamshire did that was because Arthur Scargill wouldn't give Notts lads a vote. Yeah. It was like, give us a vote, and the chances are we're going to vote to strike. But they didn't get a vote. They were told to strike. So that's been lost in the fullness of time. But to this day, Michelle, people still... I've seen 80-year-old coal miners want to fight each other still
I know.
about this. And that word is a particularly loaded word that still to this day gets... octogenarians ready to go.
Well, it does. And there is a thing about solidarity, but you have to win hearts and minds to do it. So the point about the Nottingham coal miners was that there should have been a proper democratic vote. Calling people names because you want to shut that down and you don't think you're necessarily going to win that vote is really a massive problem. I think the other thing is that there should have been more of an attempt by the RMT and others to win the hearts and minds more. I think Mick Lynch did a fair enough job at making his case, but he didn't win enough hearts and minds. And I think that there's a question of the private sector who quite understandably think, hold on, we don't have some of these other benefits and we're often going to get discarded. Now, that's not for us to compete with one another about. I think that's an opportunity for us all to insist on a couple of things. One, we need far better infrastructure and investment. Two, everyone's pay should be much more. How do we get that? We get that by having an ambitious approach, a long-term approach, not short-term measures.
In the public sector and the private sector, higher wages.
Absolutely. But the way you get higher wages is you increase productivity. Our productivity is sclerotic in Britain. It has been for a long time.
How do you do that? There's no trains.
Research and... OK, but you're taking it in the instance. I'm saying that a range of things, right? There are all sorts of measures, as we've seen, like bullet trains, right? There's all sorts of measures like proper new drilling techniques.
HS2, 100 million quid. It's a white elephant.
The HS2, if you look at the drilling techniques that now have come with nanorobots, if you look at some of the measures that Elon Musk has proposed with his boring and tunnels, if you look at things like flying drones in Melbourne to carry people around, there's a range. We should have a...
We can't even get...
I know.
I don't know, the whole to...
I can't even get to...
That's exactly my point,
I can't get to Skeggy.
My point is about this is that in the whole discussions about levelling up, about what can happen in Britain, we should have a future Festival of Britain approach where we have dynamic creativity, investment, and we're not squabbling amongst ourselves, which is what this discussion, to me, has become about.
I'm not squabbling with you. I'm just in awe of the fact that we're talking about drones and bullet trains and all the rest of it, when literally you try getting from east to west in this country. Good luck with that.
It took me 7 hours to get to Wales the other day from London, from a station there.
7 hours? 7 hours, everyone. I bet you've all got tales of woe when it comes to disrupted travelling on the trains. Anyway, that's a whole topic for a whole different day. Lots, though, to come up with. Well, I say lots. Look at that. Look at the time. It's flown. It's almost 7:15, everyone. Anyway, I'll tell you what I do want to talk about. ULEZ, of course, was expanded yesterday, and now there's been people basically tearing down the cameras, trashing the cameras, and one MP has basically said it's not too bad to do that. There or thereabouts. Do you agree or not?
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you right through till 7 o'clock tonight, alongside with the journalist and former Brexit Party MEP Martin Daubney and the co-founder of the Together Declaration, Alan Miller. We've had lots of response to some of the conversations tonight on that whole topic of mental health and all the rest of it. Caitlin says, I suffer from mental health issues and I am sick of people blaming mental health for the behaviour of individuals who behave in the manner that they do because they choose to. She says the work world has gone mad. Have to say that sentiment is coming through quite a lot in terms of Jay says I am autistic and I find it offensive that someone would generalise people being aggressive and saying that is basically mental health. Mel says mental health is a new benefit claim. Lots and lots and lots of feedback on that one. When it comes to striking workers and whether or not they should get a bonus, not many people out there, I have to say, are saying that, yes, they should. Graham, you're a harsh guy. You say you'd sack all of them. They're lucky to have a job, never mind a bonus. Mike says, if you can strike as often as the rail workers have been doing, you're clearly paid sufficiently and you shouldn't get a bonus. John says these guys are taking the mick, even thinking that they should get a bonus. And David says, no, the bonus is a reward given for good work. If you've been out on strike, you're not working, never mind working well. You might have a different view, and if you do, and if you think, actually, yes, yes, you absolutely deserve that bonus. Get in touch and let me know. Very interesting thing happened today, I have to say. So Ian Duncan-Smith, we've been talking about the expansion of ULEZ as this group now that are going around basically trashing the ULEZ cameras because they don't agree with it. Anyway, so Ian Duncan-Smith has come out now and said, and I quote, that he's happy for his constituents to destroy ULEZ cameras because, I also quote, they have been lied to. Alan Miller, you're a very prominent voice on this whole ULEZ stuff. What do you make to what Ian Duncan-Smith has said?
Well, a few things. I think the first thing is that there is a lot of fury. I think he'll be experiencing that with his constituents. People are taking things into their own hands, some people, like they've done with low-traffic neighbourhoods and bollards, and they've done that, and there's fury. And I understand the sentiment when people feel like they're being ignored when there's a consultation and the majority say they don't want it. The cameras get bought anyway. We're told loads of lies, and some people will go and do that. I do think the way to achieve things and to solve them is to win enough hearts and minds to force the issue, to force the MPs and to force government and to force the mayor to stop it. And to do that democratically. And I think sometimes it can be low horizons to think you can not circumvent that. So I think it's also interesting, and we shouldn't let the Conservatives off the hook because of this, because he's in a party that was prominently promoting some of these ideas around traffic and around reduction and around policies. And now, understandably, because a lot of pressure we've all put on the government and Mark Harper, Department of Transport, which is great, a lot of the public, and thank you to everyone for doing that. Now they and also Keir Starmer and others in the Labour Party are wanting to separate themselves from this because they realise how unpopular it is and how much it damages working people. However, in many ways, the Conservatives were just as much to blame initially for all of this and the former Prime Minister. So the question has to be, how are we going to resolve this and change? This issue isn't going away, Michelle. In fact, it's going to get much worse, and it is going to be linked to some of the issues we've seen around the country where people have got them taken out, like in Warrington and elsewhere.
Sadiq Khan is a highway robber. He's acting like a feudal baron and he's clutching his pearls when the peasants are revolting. We've been ignored on Brexit. We're ignored on the consultation for ULEZ that's brought in irrespective. No choice. No mandate, just got to cough up for it. And when people aren't listened to repetitively, we saw with lockdowns again, they end up getting frustrated and bypassing the democratic system, which doesn't work for them. We know we've got a mayoral election coming up. There are some great candidates like Howard Cox for Reform who wants to get rid of all of ULEZ. I think that's what is a good ticket to go. The Conservatives, by the way, only want to stop its expansion, so they want to keep it where it is in the North and South Circular and in the middle. So they're kind of, I think, a diet Khan version. But the poll tax only got through because people took to the streets and did direct action. ULEZ is Sadiq Khan's poll tax.
Well, if Sadiq Khan was here, he'd be telling us all that all he wants to do is help save the lives of children, he would say, that is busy, been busy speaking to bereaved mums, plural, and that he feels is doing right. Christine says she completely disagrees with ULEZ, but anyone destroying anything should be severely punished. She thinks it's a shocking thing to condone the behaviour, and that was Ian Duncan-Smith doing so. Look, time flies when you've been having fun. Alan, Martin, thank you for your company.
Pleasure.
More importantly, thank you at home. Do not go anywhere. Nigel Farage up next.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, it's Aidan McGivern here with the latest forecast from the Met Office here at GB News. Clear at first over the next 24 hours. Clouds then increase, rain spreading up from the southwest for many of us later on. We've got a gap in between weather systems for the time being, low pressure pushing into the North Sea, but the next low is on the way, bringing a series of weather fronts that will particularly affect Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest by the end of the night. Already the clouds are thickening across western areas through the evening and overnight. Clear spells for Scotland, central and eastern England at first, and actually quite a fresh feel here first thing Thursday with temperatures widely in the single figures. Not quite so fresh further west, where we've got the cloud keeping things a bit milder, and we've also got the rain moving in first thing. Some heavier pulses across parts of Northern Ireland during the morning, as well as Wales and the southwest. That rain slowly pushes into the rest of Wales, the Midlands, southeast England, but it largely avoids Scotland, where we just see one or two light showers in the afternoon, likewise for the north and northeast of England. Feeling warm where we do get some sunshine coming through, feeling disappointingly cool across the central slice of the UK, 16, 17, where we've got the outbreaks of rain. Further rain to come across northern England into parts of North Wales, Northern Ireland during Friday morning. Heavy showers clear the south.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see